Hello there and welcome to Deep Sleep Science. I'm so glad you found your way here. Wherever you are tonight, whatever weight you may have carried through the hours of your day, you can begin to let it soften now. Let your shoulders fall like quiet snow drifting from the eaves of a sleeping cottage. Let your jaw unclench, your hands open, your breath grow long and unhurried like a slow river moving through a moonlit valley. There is nowhere else you need to be. There is nothing more you need to do. The world will continue to turn without your watchful eye, and the morning will arrive in its own good time. Tonight, we will wander together through one of the most quietly miraculous landscapes ever discovered, the gentle, ever-changing country of the aging human brain. We will speak of the soft folds of memory, the slow ripening of wisdom, the way thoughts mellow like autumn fruit on a sun-warmed branch. We will explore how the mind grows deeper, richer, and more dreamlike with the passing of years, like a great library lit only by candlelight, where every shelf hums with stories that have been loved into softness. If you find this kind of quiet company soothing, you might gently tap the like button or quietly subscribe before your eyes grow too heavy to lift. It costs nothing. It asks nothing more of you, and it helps these slow lullabies find their way to other tired travelers searching for rest. Now settle deeply into your pillow. Pull your blanket a little closer. Feel the warmth gather around you like the hush of a forest at dusk. Let your eyelids grow heavy as petals after a long, warm rain. Breathe in slowly and breathe out slowly and let the world dissolve. Gently, gently, into stillness. So let's begin this slow and soothing journey together. Imagine, if you will, a vast and softly lit chamber, hidden somewhere just behind your closed eyes. Inside this chamber lives a quiet universe of slow lights, shimmering pathways, and gentle rivers of thought, all whispering together in the language of dreams. This is the aging brain, a place not of fading, but of softening, of deepening, of growing more luminous in its own unhurried way. Tonight, we will visit 100 small wonders of this inner country, each one a tiny lullaby for the mind. Let your breath grow slower still, and let us drift inward together, where everything is calm, and everything is kind, deep within the soft, candle-lit chambers of an aging mind. There lives a quiet garden of neurons, each one a slender silver branch reaching gently toward another. With every passing year, these branches do not wither, as some have long believed, but instead learn to lean more thoughtfully into one another, like old willows along a sleeping pond. Their conversations grow slower, sweeter, more deliberate, like letters written by lamplight rather than telegrams sent in haste. Scientists who have wandered these inner forests with their quiet instruments have found that the older brain often chooses depth over speed, savor over urgency, meaning over noise. It is a place where each thought is held a little longer, like a warm cup of tea between cupped hands. And in this slow, golden patience, the mind discovers a quieter kind of beauty, one that only time itself could ever have offered. As the years drift onward like soft clouds across a summer sky, the brain begins to favor calmer rhythms. Its electrical music slows from the bright, restless flickering of youth into the long, low hum of an evening sea. These slower waves, gentle as breath against a window pane, carry the mind into deeper places, places where wisdom gathers like dew upon a meadow at dawn. Researchers who have listened, ear pressed softly to their delicate machines, describe these rhythms as oceanic, as lullaby-like, as the steady creaking of an old wooden boat moored in still water. The aging brain, far from being silenced, simply hums in a lower key, a key that resonates with patience, with reflection, with the quiet companionship of one's own thoughts. And in that lower music, sleep itself finds an easier path home, like a small lantern returning to its familiar cottage door. Inside every aging brain there flows a slow, silvery tide of memory, washing back and forth across the shoreline of the years. Unlike the bright, foaming waves of younger minds, this tide moves with the dignity of something ancient, depositing small treasures along its quiet beach. A scent of bread once baked by a grandmother, the sound of rain against a long-ago window, the warmth of a hand long since let go. Neuroscientists have gently noted that older minds often remember the distant past more vividly than the recent hour, as though the deeper waters keep the oldest pearls. And this is not loss, but a kind of tenderness, a soft curation of what mattered most. The aging brain, like a careful librarian, dims the bright bulbs and lights. Instead, the candles around the books that the heart has always loved. In the quiet observatories of the mind, there are small, glowing instruments called dendrites, delicate as frost upon a winter window, branching outward in patterns no two of which are ever the same. As the brain ages, these tiny branches do not simply fade away. Many of them continue to grow, slowly and patiently, like ivy climbing the wall of an old stone chapel. Each new tendril reaches gently toward another neuron, forming friendships that may have taken decades to ripen. This slow, mossy growth is one of the brain's softest secrets, a quiet rebuttal to the old fear that older means lesser. Instead, the older mind weaves an ever finer lace of connection, intricate, hand-stitched, made of moonlight and memory. It is a tapestry that no machine could ever replicate. Only time, only patience, only the long, slow art of simply living. There is a curious and beautiful thing the older brain does, something gentle and quietly remarkable. It begins to use both of its hemispheres together, more often and more harmoniously, like two old friends finally walking arm in arm down a familiar path. In younger years, the left and right sides of the brain often worked in separate rooms, each absorbed in its own task, but with the slow ripening of age, they begin to share their candlelight, leaning into one another like the soft pages of an open book. Scientists call this gentle togetherness, hemispheric balance, but it might just as easily be called wisdom, or partnership, or the soft music of a long marriage. And so the aging mind becomes more whole, more woven, more like a quilt sewn by countless evenings beside a slow and patient fire. Within the aging brain, there glides a small and ancient sea creature shape called the hippocampus. Named long ago for its resemblance to a tiny seahorse, this little curling creature is the keeper of memories, the soft librarian of the days you have lived. As the years pass, the seahorse swims a little more slowly, but it does not abandon its post. Indeed, in minds that are loved and gently exercised, it has been seen to grow new pathways even in late life, weaving fresh coral gardens of recollection. Researchers describe this as a kind of grace, a continuing capacity for renewal that hides quietly inside every gentle, curious soul. So somewhere in the warm dark behind your eyes, your own small seahorse drifts on slow currents, tending its gardens, keeping safe the dearest things you have ever known. The aging mind, it is said, becomes more skilled at the gentle art of seeing the whole picture. Where younger eyes might focus narrowly on a single bright thread, older eyes begin to perceive the entire tapestry, the way the warm browns soften the blues, the way one quiet color leans upon another. Neuroscientists describe this as the slow flowering of integrative thinking, the ability to hold many pieces at once, like a basket of summer fruit gathered from many trees. It is the reason elders often offer counsel that feels less like advice and more like weather, broad, steady, full of season. And it is a quiet gift of aging itself, an inner wide-angle lens that opens softly with the passing years, helping the mind take in more sky, more horizon, more of the long, golden distances of a thoughtful life. Deep beneath the surface of the older brain, there are small almond-shaped clusters of cells called the amygdalae, the keepers of feeling, the quiet stewards of mood. With the passing of years, these little almonds learn to respond more gently to the sharp edges of the world. They become softer in their reactions to anxiety and worry, like a small candle that has learned to flicker steadily even in a draft. Scientists call this the positivity effect, a gentle tilting of the older mind toward kindness, gratitude, and ease. It is the reason elders so often seem to walk through the world with a soft smile, untroubled by the smaller storms. Their inner weather has matured, like wine resting in a cool cellar, growing rounder, mellower, more forgiving. And in this gentle warmth, sleep finds an easier place to lay its head. The brain has a quiet rinsing system of its own, a tide that comes in during the deepest hours of sleep, washing softly through every chamber and corridor of thought. This is called the glymphatic system, named for the small star-shaped helpers called glial cells, who lift their tiny brooms in unison while you dream. As the years pass, this nightly washing remains, faithfully, like a kind innkeeper still polishing the lanterns at midnight. With each long, slow breath of slumber, the mind is rinsed of the dust of the day, leaving its little hallways clean and luminous by morning. So even now, as you settle, your inner tide is gathering at the shore, waiting only for your breathing to deepen, ready to wash through the dreaming country of your mind with the patience of moonlight on snow. In the older mind, language often becomes a slower, more deliberate music, like the careful playing of a worn and beloved piano. The words may take a little longer to find, but when they arrive, they often carry the weight of many lives lived and many evenings remembered. Researchers describe how vocabulary in older adults often grows richer over time, a slow accumulation of words like polished river stones gathered along countless walks. The pauses between thoughts are not absences, but resting places, small benches set along a winding path. And when an elder finally speaks, there is often a sense of arrival, as though the sentence had traveled a long way to reach you. This is the language of evening, unhurried, gentle, full of soft and golden meaning, like the slow chime of a distant clock across still water. There is, within the aging brain, a small and luminous structure called the prefrontal cortex, sitting just behind the gentle dome of the forehead. It is the orchard of judgment, the quiet library of decisions made well. With the slow tide of years, this orchard does not lose its trees. Instead, the trees that remain grow stronger roots, deeper branches, fuller fruits, older minds. Scientists have noticed tend to make decisions less impulsively, weighing each option as if it were a small, smooth stone held in the palm. They wait for the right wind, the right hour, the right inner stillness. And so the aging mind becomes a careful gardener of its own choices, kneeling patiently in the soft soil of experience. It is a slow, contemplative gift, one that ripens only after long, gentle seasons of simply being alive. The aging brain, like an old village at dusk, gathers more lanterns in its quiet windows. These lanterns are called myelin, a soft fatty sheath that wraps around the long pathways of the nerves, helping their messages travel smoothly and warmly. In certain regions, myelin continues to deepen well into the later years, like fresh wax poured carefully into the bowl of a beloved candle. This means that some kinds of thinking, especially those that draw upon long experience, can grow even more fluent with age, gliding along well-tended roads through familiar countrysides. Scientists call this continued maturation, but you might call it polish, or warmth, or the soft sheen on an old wooden table that has welcomed many meals. The mind, in this way, ages not into dullness, but into a kind of soft, glowing readiness. Within every aging mind there lives a quiet kind of music called default mode, a soft inner orchestra that plays whenever the world grows still. It is the music of daydreams, of remembering, of imagining, of wandering inward, as one might wander through an old garden at twilight. As the years gather, this inner orchestra learns to play more softly, more selectively, with greater patience between its notes. Scientists have gently observed that older minds often have richer inner lives in these quiet moments, full of slow reflections and tender returnings to the past. It is why elders often look so peacefully into a fire or out a rainy window. Lost in some sweet inner room, they are not absent. They are simply listening to the music that only their long lives could have composed, a lullaby written by every season they have ever known. There is a soft and curious fact about the older brain that often surprises those who first hear it. It continues, throughout the entire span of life, to grow brand new neurons in certain quiet pockets, particularly within the hippocampus, that little seahorse of memory. This gentle process is called neurogenesis, and it carries on like a small, hidden spring bubbling up beneath a forest floor. Each new neuron is a small green shoot, a fresh promise, a tiny lantern lit in a long, soft hall. Researchers tell us that walking, learning, music, and gentle company all encourage this slow blooming. So even now, as your breathing slows, somewhere within you a few new threads of mind are being quietly woven, like wildflowers opening in the dark, asking nothing, simply trusting that morning will come and find them again. The aging brain is a master of pattern, of recognizing the soft echoes of things it has seen before, with each year. It builds an ever larger collection of familiar shapes, like a wise old shepherd who can tell each sheep by the curl of its wool. This is why elders so often seem to know what comes next, in a story, in a season, in a passing mood. Their minds have walked these paths before and remember every turn. Scientists call this crystallized intelligence, knowledge that has been pressed slowly into form, like salt left behind by a sea that has long since gone. It is unhurried, sturdy, deeply rooted, the kind of knowing that does not need to rush. And in the soft glow of this slow accumulation, the older mind moves through the world with the calm of a long-lit lantern. There is, in the quiet folds of the older brain, a deepening kindness, a softening of the sharper instincts of younger years. Researchers have found that as people age, their minds often shift gently toward warmth, generosity, and the soft pleasure of helping others. This is sometimes called the pro-social turn, but it might more simply be called the season of giving. Like a tree heavy with autumn fruit, the older mind has more to share and seems to delight in the sharing. Even at the level of brain activity, regions associated with empathy and care grow more easily lit, like windows softly glowing on a cold evening. So if you have ever wondered why so many elders carry a quiet kindness about them, it is partly the long, slow ripening of the mind itself, growing sweeter, year by year, like fruit kept on a sunny sill. Imagine the older mind as a long forest path, lit by countless small lanterns, each lantern a memory, each flicker a feeling held dear. The brain, as it ages, becomes especially gifted at preserving emotional memories, the ones tied to warmth or wonder or love. While the smaller details of an ordinary Tuesday may quietly fade, the soft texture of a child's laughter from 40 years ago, or the smell of a kitchen at the holidays, stays luminous. Neuroscientists describe this as the gentle bias of the older brain toward emotional salience, the way a careful curator chooses which paintings to keep in the warmest gallery. So the aging mind becomes a soft museum of meaningful nights, full of long, glowing rooms, and it is a beautiful museum, hushed and golden, where only the heart's favorite hours remain on quiet. Candlelit display, deep within the older brain, there are tiny rivers of chemical light called neurotransmitters, soft messengers that carry feeling and thought from one cell to another. As the years drift on, these little rivers may flow a little more gently, but they continue to whisper their messages with care. Some, like serotonin and oxytocin, are often more easily summoned by simple pleasures, by warm tea, by a kind voice, by a long walk in dappled light. The aging mind seems to know how to draw sweetness from quieter sources, like a wise traveler who has learned to gather joy from the smallest wildflowers along the path. And so each soft hour of an ordinary day becomes its own gentle medicine, a small cup of chemical kindness sipped slowly and offered tenderly by the brain to the heart that has carried it for so long. The older brain is often described by scientists as a place of beautiful efficiency, a kind of well-tended cottage rather than a sprawling new mansion. With the passing of years, it learns to use fewer neurons to accomplish many familiar tasks, the way an experienced cook needs fewer movements to prepare a beloved meal. The lights in the older brain do not need to blaze in every room. Just the right rooms are softly lit, the rest left in restful shadow. Researchers call this neural efficiency, but it might also be called grace. The same grace by which an old dancer moves more sparingly, yet more beautifully than ever before. And so the aging mind hums along quietly, doing more with less, like a single candle that warms an entire room simply by being placed exactly where it is most needed. In the soft, ever-changing country of the older brain, certain skills do not fade but deepen instead. Vocabulary, general knowledge, emotional understanding, and the gentle art of perspective all tend to continue their slow ripening well into the later years. Like an oak that grows fuller and more sheltering with each decade, the aging mind spreads its branches outward, offering more shade, more rest, more places for songbirds to alight. Scientists call this the lifelong growth of crystallized abilities, but it has also been described, more poetically, as the harvest after a long planting. So if you have ever found comfort in the words of someone older, it is because their inner orchard has been gathering fruit for many quiet seasons, and now it stands heavy and golden, generous as a long, warm afternoon at the very end of summer. Within the aging brain, sleep itself becomes a soft, recurring miracle, a gentle gardener returning each night to tend the fields of thought. Even though older adults sometimes sleep in shorter, lighter stretches, the brain continues to drink deeply from the wells of slumber whenever it can. During these quiet hours, memories are gently sorted like fallen leaves, the meaningful ones gathered carefully, the others allowed to drift away on a kind, unseen wind. Scientists have watched this nightly tidying through their soft, glowing instruments and have called it a kind of mental composting, a slow turning of the day into the rich soil of tomorrow. So as your breathing slows, somewhere inside you, the gardener is already kneeling at the edge of the dream beds, smiling softly, tending what matters most while you drift into the warm, dark hush. There is, in the older brain, a quiet talent for narrative, for shaping the loose threads of a life into one long, soft tapestry. Researchers describe this as autobiographical coherence, the gentle ability to see one's own days as a single, flowing story rather than a scatter of unconnected hours. Like an old weaver at her loom, the aging mind picks up threads from childhood, from young love, from work, from loss, from laughter, and gently sews them together into something whole. And in this wholeness, there is rest. There is the soft sigh of seeing one's own life as something meaningful, something held, something kind. So if you ever feel time pulling itself together in your chest, like a slow shawl drawn close, that is the older mind doing what it loves best, making one warm story out of many gentle years. The aging brain has a remarkable fondness for music, for the soft architecture of sound and rhythm. Even when other memories grow gentler, music often remains, woven so deeply into the older mind that it can pass through long, quiet years untouched. Scientists describe music as a special guest in the brain, welcomed by many rooms at once, by memory, by feeling, by movement, by breath. Old songs in particular can light up the aging mind like lanterns hung along a familiar lane. A single melody can bring back the warmth of an old kitchen, the swaying of a long-ago dance, the soft scent of a summer evening. So music becomes a kind of golden thread, drawn gently through the years, stitching together every season of life into one slow, glowing hymn that the brain seems determined never to forget. Deep within the older mind, there is a softening of urgency, a quiet diminishing of that restless inner drum that once beat so loudly in youth. With the passing of years, the brain's stress responses often grow gentler, like a once rushing stream that has carved itself into a slower, wider river. Cortisol, the busy little messenger of worry, becomes a quieter visitor in many older minds, especially among those who have learned the slow arts of patience, walking, and warmth. Scientists call this emotional regulation, a soft mastery of the inner weather. It is the reason elders so often seem unmoved by small storms, sipping their tea while the rain ticks gently at the window. Their minds have grown a long, kind coastline where waves arrive, are felt, and then are quietly released back into the wide, calm sea. The aging brain is, in its own quiet way, a sky full of constellations. Each neuron is a small, distant star, and the pathways between them form gentle patterns visible only to those who look with patience. With time, certain constellations grow brighter, others softly fade, but the whole inner sky remains vast and full of wonder. Scientists describe the brain's connectome, the great map of all its inner roads, as one of the most complex landscapes in the known universe. And in the older mind, this map carries the route of every life lived, every loved face remembered, every hill walked, every word ever whispered into a beloved ear. So if you have ever felt that you carry a whole world inside you, you are not imagining it. You do, and tonight, that quiet world is softly preparing itself for sleep. In the older brain, attention itself begins to behave like a wise old gardener with a small, careful watering can. Rather than rushing from one bright bloom to another, lingers, tending only those things that truly matter. Researchers describe this as selective attention, a gentle narrowing of focus toward what brings meaning or peace. The young mind may chase every shimmering distraction, but the older mind chooses its companions with care. It rests its gaze upon a familiar tree, a quiet face, a single line of a beloved poem. And in this slow, deliberate looking, the world grows richer, not poorer. Each chosen thing is seen more fully, more deeply, more lovingly, so the aging mind becomes a careful curator of its own attention, a soft keeper of the few quiet treasures that have, over many seasons, proven themselves most worthy of being truly seen. There is a beautiful word in the science of the aging brain. It is called wisdom. And unlike most things scientists measure, it has no clear edges, no neat little box. Researchers describe wisdom as a slow, soft weave of many gifts, of empathy, of patience, of perspective, of the gentle acceptance of life's quiet mysteries. Brain imaging suggests that wisdom lives not in any single room of the mind, but in a long, warm hallway connecting many. It draws from emotional balance, from long memory, from the soft humility of having been wrong before and learned. So wisdom is not a single light, but a chandelier, hung high in the older mind, lit by many small flames at once, and in its glow, the whole inner house grows hushed and golden, welcoming, the kind of place where a tired traveler might happily lie down to rest. The older brain has a soft, almost luminous skill for noticing what is good. Scientists call it the positivity bias, the gentle tendency of aging minds to remember and seek out the warm, the kind, the beautiful, while younger minds often scan for danger or for what is missing. Older minds more often rest their gaze upon what is present and pleasing, like a soft hand drawn across the warm fur of a sleeping cat. This is not a denial of life's harder textures, but a gentle reweighting, a quiet choice to dwell more often in the sunlit corners. In brain scans, areas linked to pleasure and meaning light up more easily in older adults as they recall their lives. So the aging mind becomes a soft lantern that turns naturally toward whatever softly glows, like a flower slowly following the long, quiet path of the sun. Within the older brain, intuition begins to ripen like fruit kept too long on a sun-warmed branch, growing softer, sweeter, more deeply itself. Researchers have noticed that older adults often arrive at correct conclusions without being able to fully explain how they knew. This is not magic, but the long, layered echo of countless experiences settling quietly into the inner soil. The aging mind has walked so many paths that it recognizes the feel of the right one beneath its feet. Scientists call this pattern-based intuition, but it has also been described as the murmur of the deep self. It speaks softly, in feelings rather than words, in warmth rather than logic. And so the older mind comes to trust its own quiet hints, the small inner weather vanes that gently turn toward truth, like meadow grass swaying in a wind no one else can see. The older brain has a tender relationship with stories. Whether read, told, or remembered, narratives seem to ripple through its many rooms, lighting up regions of memory, emotion, and meaning all at once. Scientists describe story as a kind of master key for the aging mind, opening doors that other forms of thought cannot. This may be why elders so often turn naturally towards storytelling, weaving the events of long-ago days into long, slow tapestries for younger listeners. Each story is also a gentle exercise for the brain itself, keeping its inner pathways soft, supple, and warm, so when an older voice begins, once, long ago, somewhere far from here, an entire inner garden begins to bloom. And in that garden, both teller and listener can rest a while, sheltered beneath the slow, leafy boughs of words that have long since learned to comfort. In the older mind, gratitude becomes a quietly recurring guest, arriving more often and staying longer. Researchers have found that aging brains are particularly responsive to feelings of thankfulness, lighting up softly in the regions tied to reward, social warmth, and inner peace. With each year, the brain seems to grow more skilled at noticing small, ordinary blessings. The warm cup, the kind word, the slant of late afternoon light across a quiet floor. Gratitude becomes less an emotion and more a soft, ongoing weather. It is as if the older mind has learned to keep a small, inner lamp permanently lit, casting its gentle glow over the simplest moments. So the aging brain becomes a slow chapel of thanks, where even ordinary hours are received as quiet gifts, set down carefully upon an altar of long, deeply lived appreciation. Deep in the older brain, there are pathways called white matter highways, soft inner roads connecting one quiet town of thought to another. With age, these highways may grow a little narrower in places, like old country lanes lined with deeper hedges. Yet in well-tended minds, especially those that walk, read, learn, and love regularly, many of these roads remain remarkably clear and welcoming. Scientists describe this as maintained connectivity, the gentle stewardship of the mind's long inner travels. So even in the deeper years, thoughts continue to walk these warm, familiar lanes, passing the same old gardens, the same softly lit windows, the same patient stone walls, and these long inner journeys, made over and over through a lifetime, become the very thing that keeps the older mind connected, woven, and softly humming with the music of meaningful inner travel. There is, within the older brain, a deep affection for the familiar, favorite rooms, favorite paths, favorite songs, favorite chairs. All are received by the mind with a soft sigh of recognition. Neuroscientists describe how familiar stimuli light up reward and comfort centers more readily as we age, like a returning friend welcomed at the door. This is why elders so often delight in small, repeated rituals, the morning tea, the slow walk at dusk, the same beloved book opened to the same beloved page. These rituals are not boredom. They are nourishment. They are the warm bread of the soul, kneaded and baked anew each day. So the aging mind learns to love its small repetitions, finding in each one a quiet doorway back into peace, like a path home walked so many times that the feet no longer need eyes to follow it. The older brain has a quiet relationship with time, often perceiving it as moving more softly, more dreamlike, more like a slow current than a rushing river. Researchers have noticed that as we age, our sense of time becomes more fluid, more porous. Mornings and afternoons drift together gently, like watercolors blending on a damp page. This is partly because the older mind compares each day to many days before it, so the edges naturally blur. But it is also a kind of gift, a softening of time's sharper teeth. The aging mind learns to dwell in the long present, less hurried, less anxious about the next hour, and so each moment becomes longer, deeper, more spacious, like a cathedral built entirely of pauses. To live within such time is to live, in a way, already a little inside the country of rest. Within the older brain, there is a soft, abiding capacity for love, deeper perhaps than at any other time of life. The neural pathways linked to attachment, warmth, and bonding remain remarkably resilient with age, often deepening as relationships ripen across long years. Brain scans of older couples show that simply hearing the voice of a beloved partner can quiet the inner alarms of stress, like a hand gently laid upon a startled bird. Scientists describe this as relational regulation, the soft co-tuning of one nervous system with another over decades of shared days. And so the aging mind becomes especially gifted at this quiet music. It hums in response to those it loves, like an old wooden instrument that has played beside the same partner for so long that they have come to share a single, slow, harmonious song. In the soft, candlelit observatory of the aging brain, dreams continue to bloom, often growing richer, longer, and more sweetly strange. Older adults report dreams steeped in nostalgia, in old houses, in beloved gardens long since left behind. Researchers believe this is the brain's gentle way of revisiting and weaving together the threads of a long life, like an old seamstress quietly sorting through the spools of an entire career. During the dreaming hours, the mind seems to gather pieces of yesterday and 40 years ago, and last Tuesday and a long-forgotten afternoon, and stitch them softly into one warm, dream-colored quilt. So tonight, when sleep finally comes, perhaps a dream will come too. Gentle and unhurried, drifting through an old hallway you remember, where someone you loved is humming softly, just out of sight, in a room full of warm and golden light. The older mind is often described as having a particularly tender relationship with silence. While younger minds may grow restless in stillness, older minds frequently move toward it the way an old cat finds the warmest patch of sun. Researchers describe how the aging brain seems to require less external stimulation to feel content, drawing more easily from its own deep inner well. Quiet rooms, slow afternoons, still gardens, all become soft companions rather than empty spaces. In silence, the older mind can hear itself thinking, gently and unhurriedly, like a long conversation with a very old friend who needs no reply to feel heard. So if you have ever seen an elder simply sitting, eyes soft, looking at nothing in particular, know that they are not lonely. They are listening to the great, gentle hum of their own well-loved inner world. There is, in the older brain, an ever-deepening sense of meaning. While the younger mind often seeks happiness, the older mind often seeks something quieter and more enduring. a sense that one's days hold significance, that one's small kindnesses ripple outward. Scientists describe this shift as the move from hedonic to eudaimonic well-being, a gentle reorientation toward depth rather than thrill. And the aging brain seems beautifully designed for this kind of slow flourishing. Regions tied to reflection, to legacy, to care for others, all become more easily engaged. So the older mind begins to live in its own quiet way, like a wise old monk in a small mountain temple, tending the lamps, watering the garden, and finding the day complete in the simple knowing that something good has been gently added to the soft, ongoing weave of the world. The aging brain has a soft and surprising fondness for nature. Researchers have found that exposure to trees, water, bird song, and gentle landscapes brings particularly deep restoration to older minds. Within just minutes of stepping into a quiet park or a slow garden, the inner storm clouds of stress begin to soften. Like fog lifting from a still pond. Scientists call this biophilic restoration, but you might call it simply going home. The aging mind seems to recognize in green leaves and slow rivers a kind of ancient kin, an old, wordless companionship that needs no introduction. So if you have ever known an elder who spends long, quiet hours simply watching a garden, know that they are not idle. They are being gently rewoven by the patient, leafy hands of the world itself, returning each evening just a little more whole than they began. In the older mind, forgiveness becomes a softer, more available possibility. The neural pathways tied to rumination, to the long, sharp echo of old hurts, often grow quieter with age, particularly in those who have practiced reflection and warmth. The aging brain seems to learn, slowly and patiently, that holding tightly is heavier than letting softly go. Scientists describe how older adults often experience a gentle lightening of long-carried grudges, a soft loosening of the hands of memory. It is not that the past is forgotten, but that it is no longer held so close. The mind becomes a slow river that carries old stones smoother and smoother until they no longer cut. And so the older mind grows lighter in a quiet, important way, freed by the same long years that once seemed only to add weight to its softly walking heart. There is, within the aging brain, a quiet and lasting capacity for awe. Researchers have noticed that older adults, when shown vast skies, sweeping landscapes, or the slow turning of stars, respond with a soft, full-bodied wonder that often exceeds that of the young. Their long lives have given them more reference points for marveling, more inner thresholds for being moved. The older mind seems to know how rare a sunset truly is, how brief a lifetime, how soft a child's hand. Scientists call this the appreciation of impermanence, but it might be more simply called reverence. And in the warm light of reverence, the older mind grows expansive, almost weightless, like a small candle borne aloft by a gentle, rising air. So awe, in age, becomes less a sudden burst and more a steady, quiet glow. The aging brain remains capable of learning new things throughout the whole long span of life. While the speed of learning may gentle a little, the depth of learning often grows. Older students, researchers have noticed, tend to absorb new knowledge into a wider, richer field of context, like new seeds planted in already fertile soil. They make more connections, draw more analogies, and find more meaning in what they learn. Scientists call this contextual integration, but you might call it the slow route of true understanding. So if you have ever known an elder taking up a new language, a new instrument, a new art, do not be surprised at how naturally it seems to settle into them. The older mind has been preparing for that very seed for a very long time, and the soil is patient, dark, and warmly waiting. Within the older brain, there often grows a beautiful tolerance for ambiguity, a willingness to sit gently with questions that may never be answered, Younger minds frequently long for sharp conclusions, neat boxes, firm certainties. The aging mind, after many seasons of weather, learns to dwell more comfortably in the soft, open meadow of not knowing. Scientists describe this as cognitive flexibility in late life, but it might be more poetically called the long, slow opening of the inner sky. The older mind allows mystery to settle around it like a soft mist, beautiful, unhurried, complete. And so elders so often answer hard questions with small, quiet smiles, as if to say, "Ah yes, that one too remains lovely and unsolved." In that gentle smile lives one of the deepest comforts of age, the long-earned freedom to stop demanding answers from the slow, dreaming world. The older brain is deeply, beautifully social. Even when bodies move more slowly, the regions of the mind tied to connection, to warmth, to belonging, continue to hum with care. Researchers describe how older adults often draw enormous neural benefit from small social moments: a gentle chat with a neighbor, a phone call with a grandchild, a shared cup of tea. These quiet exchanges light up the social brain like soft strings of paper lanterns hung across a summer evening. And these lanterns are not decorative. They are nourishing. They literally help protect memory, mood, and cognitive ease. So the aging mind reminds us, in its own quiet way, that we were never meant to walk this long road alone. Every kind word, every shared laugh, every soft moment of being seen becomes a small candle warming the long, gentle hallway of an elder's well-loved life. In the older brain, humor often becomes more delicate, more tender, more woven with affection. Researchers describe how aging minds tend to find deep delight in gentle absurdities. In the soft comedy of being human, the sharp, sudden bursts of younger laughter often soften into a long, glowing chuckle, like the slow crackling of a fire. The aging brain's reward pathways respond especially strongly to warm, inclusive humor, the kind that gathers rather than excludes, and so elders so often delight in small, kind jokes, in the quiet absurdity of cats, in the gentle ironies of life itself. Their laughter becomes a soft, generous lamp, illuminating those around them. And in the soft glow of that lamp, the whole room feels safer, warmer, more loved. So humor, in age, ripens into a quiet form of companionship, a soft hand offered across the long table of years. The older brain has a particular love for ritual, for the slow repetitions that give shape to a day. Morning tea, evening prayer, a familiar walk, an old playlist, all become more than habits. They become small inner sanctuaries. Scientists describe how predictable rituals quiet the brain's stress responses, lowering the inner thermostat into warm, sleepy registers. The aging mind seems to particularly thrive on these soft repetitions, finding within them both comfort and meaning. They mark time gently, without demanding speed. They offer the mind a small, steady horizon to walk toward, and so the days of older lives often become like a string of quiet pearls, each one warm, smooth, lovingly polished by repetition, and on this gentle string, even the harder days find themselves softened, held in the larger, kinder pattern of a life shaped by simple, sacred, comforting things. Within the older brain, there is a soft and enduring sensitivity to beauty. The visual regions of the mind, the parts that take in light, color, and shape, continue to respond richly throughout life, especially when they are gently fed by gardens, art, soft skies, and slow walks. Researchers describe how older adults often report seeing the world as more beautiful than they did in youth, even as the eyes themselves may grow softer. This is not the eye, but the inner viewer, the mind that has at last learned how to look. The aging brain, having seen so much, has finally grown still enough to truly behold. So an elder may stand for a long, quiet while before a single rose, not because nothing else is happening, but because everything is, and in that one rose, they are seeing whole years of unfolding wonder. There is, in the aging brain, a deep and growing appreciation for slowness, activities that the younger mind might find tedious, slow puzzles, slow walks, slow conversations, slow cooking, become rich and luminous to the older mind. Scientists have observed that older adults often experience deeper flow states in slow, meditative activities with greater calm and meaning than the same tasks bring to younger people. The brain seems to settle gently into unhurried doing. Like an old boat finding its perfect mooring, there is no rush. There is no race. There is only this slow, gentle weaving of attention into the present moment. And in that weaving, time itself begins to soften. So slowness, for the older mind, is not delay, it is arrival. It is the long, sweet realization that there was never anywhere to hurry to in the first place. The older brain has a soft, sustaining capacity for hope, even in late life. Researchers describe how aging minds frequently maintain or even deepen their sense of possibility, especially when they remain connected to loved ones and to meaningful pursuits. This hope is rarely loud. It is the quiet hope of a gardener planting bulbs in autumn, knowing the bloom will come long after the snow. The aging mind has seen many winters and many springs, and remembers that one always follows the other. Scientists call this temporal perspective, the long view of time. But it is also simply trust. Trust that the next morning will come, that the kettle will whistle, that life, in its slow, deep way, will continue to be quietly worth waking for. And in that soft trust, the older mind finds one of its most precious nightly companions. Halfway now through our slow journey, and the inner country of the aging brain has begun to feel like a place you might already know. Soft, golden, gently humming, full of warm lights and patient pathways. Each fact we have shared is a small lantern hung along your inner path tonight. They glow without asking anything of you, simply offering their light to your slowing breath, your softening eyes, your loosening shoulders. The aging brain is not a fading place. It is a deepening place, like an old forest at twilight, full of mystery and shelter and slow, kind life. And the more we wander these inner paths together, the more clearly we see how beautifully time has shaped us, how kindly the years have woven us. Let yourself settle deeper now, into your blankets, into your breath, into the slow, soft hush of our long, gentle journey. In the older brain, there are tiny structures called synapses, the gentle meeting places where one neuron whispers softly to another. With each passing year, the synapses do not simply diminish. Many of them grow more refined, more selective, like old friends who have learned exactly which words bring the most comfort. Scientists describe how the aging brain prunes away the unused pathways and strengthens those that have proven kind, useful, or beloved. It is a quiet inner gardener at work, trimming the wild hedges, leaving the most fragrant flowers to bloom. So the older mind becomes, over time, a beautifully tended garden, smaller perhaps in places, but deeper, sweeter, more intentional in every leaf and petal. And in this slow tending, the aging mind reveals one of its most tender secrets, that loss and refinement are often, very gently, the same long, patient thing. There is, within the older brain, a particular gift for the contemplation of long horizons. Researchers describe how aging minds often grow especially comfortable with the wide, slow questions. Where have I been? What have I loved? What shall I leave gently behind? These long, soft questions do not trouble the older mind in the way they might trouble a younger one. Instead, they unfold like a slow sunset, beautiful, unhurried, full of warm and deepening color. The aging brain has lived enough seasons to know that not all questions are meant to be answered. Some are meant to be walked through, the way one walks through a long meadow at evening. And so the older mind becomes a kind of soft, evening field, full of slow questions and slower answers, and a horizon that glows quietly with the gentle, golden patience of a life truly lived. The older brain is remarkably good at savoring. While younger minds may rush through pleasure like a thirsty traveler at a wayside spring, older minds tend to drink slowly, deeply, with great care. Scientists describe how aging adults often experience even simple pleasures more fully, with deeper neural engagement in the regions tied to enjoyment and presence. The warm tea is sipped, not gulped. The kind word is held, not hurried past. The slow walk becomes a small ceremony. The older mind has learned that the world is generous, but only to those willing to stop long enough to receive. And so the aging brain becomes a quiet master of receiving, lifting each small gift of the day into its slow, attentive light, like a beekeeper carefully tasting a single drop of honey from the long, golden labor of an entire summer. Within the older mind, there is often a soft, deepening connection to the body itself, a slow, quiet companionship rather than an old, competitive partnership. Researchers describe how interoception, the brain's awareness of its own inner sensations, can grow gentler and more refined in those who practice mindfulness, slow walking, or gentle breathwork. The aging mind learns, slowly, to listen to the soft language of the body, the small flutter of hunger, the quiet pull of tiredness, the warm hum of rest. This is not surveillance but care, the same care one might give to an old, well-loved friend. So the older brain becomes a soft inner caretaker, kneeling beside the body each evening, smoothing its blankets, adjusting its pillow, and whispering softly, "Well done today, well done, my dear and faithful companion." There is, in the older brain, a quiet softening of competition, a gentle turning away from the loud games of comparison. Researchers describe how aging adults often grow less concerned with status, with appearances, with the small, sharp races of younger life. The neural pathways tied to social comparison gradually grow quieter, while those tied to authenticity, contentment, and inner ease grow warmer. The older mind becomes more interested in being itself than in winning. And so elders often move through the world with a particular quietness, no longer trying to impress, no longer hurrying to prove. They are simply, beautifully, themselves. Like an old, weathered stone in a slow river, they no longer try to be anything but what they have become. And in that soft surrender to their own true shape, they find a peace that the rushing currents of younger years could never have offered. The aging brain has a tender capacity for nostalgia, the soft inner light of looking lovingly backward. Scientists describe how nostalgia is not simply sadness for the past, but a warm, restorative emotion that strengthens identity, connection, and meaning. The aging mind often visits its old rooms with a kind of gentle reverence, lighting the candles, opening the windows, letting in the familiar air. Each remembered evening, each long-ago kitchen, each old friend's laugh becomes a small, glowing thread, and these threads, woven together, form a soft, warm shawl that the older mind draws around itself in quieter hours. So nostalgia, in age, becomes a kind of inner home, lit from within, full of slow and familiar comfort, where the heart may rest a while in the gentle company of every dear face it has ever known. Within the older brain, there is a particularly tender attentiveness to children, to the bright, quick light of young life. Researchers describe how older adults often experience deep neural reward in the company of children, in their laughter, their small hands, their wide and wondering eyes. This is not coincidence, but design. The aging mind has been shaped, across long generations, to delight in and care for the youngest among us. And so grandparents so often glow softly in the presence of grandchildren, their inner lanterns lit by something ancient and good. Scientists describe this as intergenerational reward, but it might simply be called the slow circle of love. The older mind, having lived so much, becomes a soft and patient teacher, and the young mind, with its bright new flame, becomes a quiet rekindler of wonder in the elder's long, dear, well-loved heart. There is, in the older brain, a soft willingness to be moved. Researchers describe how aging adults often weep more easily, not from sorrow but from beauty, from kindness, from the gentle ache of a song well sung. The emotional pathways grow not weaker, but more porous, more open to the small, luminous moments of the world, a quiet hand laid upon a shoulder, an old hymn drifting from a distant room, a sunset over a familiar field. All can call forth a soft inner trembling, like a still pond touched by a single drop. Scientists call this affective openness, the loosening of the heart's quieter doors. And so the older mind becomes a slow, kind chapel, where even small kindnesses are received as sacred. To be moved easily is not weakness. It is the long, sweet ripening of a heart that has finally learned how to truly feel. The older brain is gently shaped by what it loves. Researchers describe how repeated activities, gardening, walking, painting, reading, praying, knitting, slowly carve quiet pathways in the inner mind, deepening the regions tied to those beloved pursuits. The aging brain becomes a soft sculpture of all that it has tenderly attended to. So a gardener's mind is partly garden, full of slow seasons and patient soil. A musician's mind is partly music, woven with old melodies. A reader's mind is partly book, full of long hallways of imagined rooms. And so the older mind is a beautiful self-portrait, painted slowly by the very things it has chosen to love. To choose well, then, is to shape oneself gently across the years. And tonight, as you rest, your own slow brain is being shaped, quietly, by the loving choice to be still. In the older brain, the breath itself becomes a soft inner ally. Researchers describe how slow, gentle breathing has profound effects on aging minds, calming the inner storm clouds, deepening sleep, lowering the small, sharp voices of worry. The brain's vagus nerve, that long, quiet thread of inner communication, hums more softly with each slow breath, sending kind messages of safety to every distant village of the body. Older adults who practice slow breathing often experience deeper rest, gentler moods, and a softer relationship with time itself. And so the breath becomes a small, reliable lullaby, available always, free always, kind always. As you breathe now, slowly and softly, your own inner threads are receiving these quiet messages of safety, and your aging brain, like a small village settling into evening, is closing its shutters, dimming its lamps, and softly preparing for sleep. The aging brain often grows particularly fond of warm light. Researchers describe how older adults are deeply responsive to soft, amber, candle-like illumination, finding within it both comfort and a quiet biological signal of evening. The aging eye, having seen so much, prefers gentler glow, and the aging mind, in turn, prefers gentler atmospheres, a small lamp in the corner, the soft flicker of a candle, the warm spill of light from a kitchen window. All of these become quiet companions, easing the older mind toward rest. Scientists call this circadian comfort, but it might also be called the long love affair between aging brains and warm, kind light. So if you find yourself drawn to softer lamps as the years pass, know that your brain is asking, gently, for the kind of illumination it has always quietly preferred, the warm, slow light of evening. There is, In the older brain, a deep and continuing love of learning, even when the world sometimes mistakenly assumes otherwise. Researchers describe how aging minds engaged in continued learning, whether through reading, conversation, art, or the slow study of a new craft, maintain remarkable cognitive vitality. Each new piece of knowledge becomes a small, fresh thread woven into the larger tapestry of all that has come before. The older mind does not need to learn quickly. It learns deeply. It learns warmly. It learns with the full company of a long lifetime as quiet context. And so the aging brain becomes a kind of slow, golden classroom, where every new lesson is greeted gently, examined patiently, and folded carefully into the soft, gathering quilt of a mind that has never stopped being beautifully, quietly, lovingly curious. The older brain has a soft, ongoing relationship with the seasons. Researchers describe how older minds often align more closely with the natural rhythms of light and dark, sleeping earlier in winter, rising softly with summer's earlier dawn. The aging body listens more gently to the world's slow turning, and the brain follows in kind. So an elder often becomes a small, living calendar, attuned to the lengthening evenings of autumn, the slow brightening of spring, the quiet hush of midwinter. Each season becomes a familiar visitor, welcomed in turn. And the older mind, having lived through so many cycles, no longer fears the colder months, but welcomes them as old companions, each carrying its own kind of comfort. So the aging brain becomes a quiet keeper of the year, walking gently through every season, like a soft lantern held aloft in the slowly turning country of time. Within the older mind, there is a tender appreciation for soft textures, for the slow language of touch. Researchers describe how older adults often respond deeply to gentle physical comforts, the warmth of a soft blanket, the smoothness of a familiar mug, the slow weight of a hand on the shoulder. The aging brain's sensory pathways may become more selective, but they often grow more grateful, more attuned to the soothing qualities of texture. So the elder reaches for the soft cardigan, the worn slippers, the long-loved chair. These are not indulgences, they are quiet medicines. And in receiving them, the older mind softens further, like a slow stream sinking deeper into its mossy banks. Touch, in age, becomes a gentle conversation between the body and its long-cared-for self, a soft, ongoing whisper of warm and unhurried care. The older brain, even in its softer years, retains the remarkable capacity to fall in love. Researchers describe how romantic feelings in late life activate many of the same warm pathways as those in youth, deepened now by the quiet wisdom of long experience. The aging mind brings to love a softer patience, a slower attention, a gentler kind of devotion. There is less rushing, less performing, more simply being together in the long, golden afternoon. Scientists describe how older love often hums with deep neural synchrony, partners' brains gently tuning to one another over years of shared meals, shared silences, shared mornings. And so the aging brain becomes a particularly beautiful place for love to live, like a small, warm house with many lamps lit, where two long-loved companions sit quietly together, fully at home, in the slow, ongoing music of one another's company. There is, in the older brain, a deepening sense of belonging to something larger than oneself. Researchers describe how aging minds often feel more strongly connected to lineage, to community, to the great slow river of generations. Brain regions tied to self-transcendence, to spiritual feeling, to a sense of cosmic belonging, often grow more easily engaged. And so the older mind becomes a soft chapel of belonging, lit by the long, golden light of all that has come before and all that will continue after. Elders often speak of feeling part of something, a family, a faith, a town, a tradition, a quiet planet turning gently in the dark. And in this feeling, there is a deep, settling rest. A knowing that the small life one carries is woven softly into a much, much larger, ongoing tapestry of patient and abiding light. The older brain has a soft, particular love for animals. Researchers describe how older adults often experience profound neural calming in the company of pets. A sleeping cat, a slow dog, a quiet bird. The simple presence of an animal lowers inner storm clouds, softens the mind's restless edges, and brings about a slow, warm release of comforting chemical. The aging mind seems to recognize in animals a kind of wordless companionship, a creature that asks for very little and offers very much. So the warm purr against a lap, the soft weight of a paw on a foot, the gentle breath of a sleeping companion, all become quiet medicines for the older mind. And in their company, the elder finds a soft, deep peace, the kind of peace that asks no questions, requires no answers, and simply hums along gently with the slow, kind rhythm of being. Within the older brain, there is often a particularly luminous appreciation for water. Researchers describe how the slow sound of water, of rain, of waves, of gentle streams, has deep calming effects on aging minds, easing the inner weather into long, dreamy stillness. Older adults often report feeling especially soothed by water, drawn to it the way a tired traveler is drawn to a familiar inn. Perhaps the aging mind, after so many years of inner turning, recognizes in water its own slow, patient nature. So the gentle ticking of rain on a window pane, the soft chuckle of a stream over stones, the long murmur of an evening tide, all become natural lullabies for the older mind. And tonight, perhaps you may hear, somewhere within yourself, the soft inner music of water, gently rising to carry you towards sleep. The older brain has a soft, ongoing affection for the smell of certain places. Researchers describe how olfactory memory remains particularly powerful into late life, with scent often triggering long, vivid recollections of childhood homes, old kitchens, beloved gardens. A single warm whiff of cinnamon, or pine, or rain on stone, can open a door deep within the older mind, and through that door drift back rooms thought long forgotten. Scientists call this the Proust effect, named for an old French writer who once tasted a small cake and recalled, in a great flood, his entire childhood. So the aging brain becomes a soft-scented library, its books arranged not by date but by fragrance. And on certain quiet evenings, a single drifting scent can lead the elder gently back through long hallways, into the warmest, oldest rooms of memory. In the older brain, there is a beautiful capacity for what scientists call ego transcendence, the soft loosening of the smaller self into something larger and more peaceful. With age, the boundaries of the self often grow gentler, more permeable, allowing the older mind to feel deeply connected to family, to nature, to the slow, ongoing breath of the world itself. This is not a loss of self, but a widening of it, like a small lantern whose light gradually fills an entire room. Researchers describe how older adults often report a quieter ego, a softer focus on personal striving, and a deeper joy in giving, witnessing, and simply being part of life. So the aging mind becomes a soft, expanded country, where the self is less a wall and more a window, opening gently outward into the slow, kind, golden weather of the wider world. The older brain has a particular fondness for slow stories told around long tables. Researchers describe how shared meals, especially those that linger, deeply engage the older mind, calming the inner weather and lighting up regions tied to belonging, memory, and warmth. The long table becomes a kind of soft inner home, where stories are passed back and forth like warm bread. The aging mind delights in this slow exchange. The gentle teasing, the familiar laughter, the soft repetition of beloved tales. and the brain itself rests deeply in such company, its restless edges softened by the steady glow of shared time. So the older mind reminds us, in its quiet way, that one of the simplest medicines is also one of the oldest, the long, lit table, with kind faces around it, and slow stories making their gentle way from heart to heart through the warm evening air. Within the older brain, there is a soft, abiding appreciation for unhurried beauty. Researchers describe how aging adults often find deep pleasure in small, ordinary scenes that younger minds might walk past, the way light falls upon a wooden floor, the slow trembling of a curtain in a quiet breeze, the small puddle of warmth where a sleeping cat has lain. These tiny, glowing moments engage the older brain deeply, in regions tied to mindfulness, awe, and inner peace. The aging mind has learned, slowly, that beauty is not always found in grand vistas, but in the small, soft, often overlooked, and so the older brain becomes a quiet collector of these small radiances, gathering them gently like wildflowers pressed between the pages of a long, well-loved book, where they remain, soft and fragrant, for as long as the heart wishes to find them. The aging brain has a particularly tender relationship with old photographs. Researchers describe how viewing familiar faces, especially those of beloved family members, lights up many regions of the older mind at once, weaving together memory, emotion, identity, and warmth. Each photograph becomes a small inner doorway, opening softly into a long, golden room. The aging mind moves through these inner rooms with care, lingering at favorite faces, smiling at old afternoons. Scientists describe this as autobiographical reminiscence, but it might more simply be called a quiet visit with one's own life. And the brain itself rests deeply in these visits, comforted by the long, soft presence of the people and places it has loved. So old photographs become not just images but quiet companions, lighting the older mind from within with the soft, ongoing radiance of a long and dearly remembered life. There is, within the older brain, a deepening quiet affection for the sky. Researchers describe how older adults often spend more time simply looking upward, watching clouds drift, stars emerge, the slow turning of the world's long sea. This skyward attention engages calm, awe-related regions of the brain, easing the inner weather into long, dreamy stillness. The aging mind seems to find in the sky a soft companion, one that has been with them since childhood, never changing yet endlessly new. The same sky that watched them grow, now watches them rest. And so an elder gazing upward at evening is not idle, but communing with one of the oldest friends they have ever known. So tonight, perhaps you too may turn your inner gaze upward and feel that long, soft ceiling of sky drift gently above your slowly dreaming heart. We have arrived now at a small, soft halfway point within our journey, 3/4 of the inner country gently explored. The aging brain, you may have noticed, is not a place of dimming, but a place of slow, golden ripening. Each fact has been a small candle, lit and set along the quiet path of your evening. Together they form a long, glowing hallway, leading you gently inward toward rest. Let your breath grow even slower now, like a soft tide returning home. Let your shoulders fall a little further. Let the small, kind country of your own aging mind welcome you with all its warm, candlelit chambers. There is no rush. There is no race. There is only this slow, sweet wandering, deeper and deeper into the soft, glowing, beautifully unfolding country of the mind that has loved you faithfully through every single one of your beautifully gathered years. In the older brain, there are small glowing networks called salience pathways, the inner attention keepers that quietly decide what is worth noticing. With the passing of years, these pathways grow more selected, more discerning, like a wise old librarian who knows exactly which books to leave open on the table. Researchers describe how aging minds often filter out the small, sharp noises of the world more gracefully, letting the trivial pass by like leaves drifting down a slow stream. What remains is what truly matters. The warm voice, the kind gesture, the slow afternoon light. So the older mind becomes a soft inner sanctuary, where only the meaningful is allowed to linger long. And in that hushed, kindly filtering, the aging brain finds a deep and quiet peace, like a small cottage where only the dearest guests have ever been welcomed inside. The older brain has a soft, surprising relationship with poetry. Researchers describe how aging minds often respond deeply to verse, lighting up regions tied to imagery, rhythm, memory, and meaning all at once. Each line of a beloved poem becomes a small inner staircase, leading gently downward into long, candlelit rooms of feeling. The aging mind has lived enough to taste the deep flavor of metaphor, to recognize the slow weight of a well-chosen word. And so elders often return to favorite poems again and again, finding in them ever-deepening companionship. Scientists describe how reading poetry slowly can engage the older brain like few other activities, calming, enriching, and gently weaving its many rooms together. So poetry becomes a quiet inner home for the aging mind, where words rest like soft lamps along the long, slow hallways of a beautifully remembered life. Within the older brain, there is a particularly tender love for the sound of familiar voices. Researchers describe how the aging mind recognizes the voices of loved ones with remarkable speed and depth, lighting up many warm regions at once: attachment, memory, safety, joy. A single hello from a beloved voice can soften the inner weather of an entire afternoon. The older mind seems to carry these voices like small, glowing lanterns hung along the inner halls of memory. And so the simple act of a phone call from a child or grandchild becomes more than communication. It becomes nourishment. It becomes a small, slow medicine. So if you have ever wondered why elders so cherish even short calls, know that within them, the brain has just received a soft, healing visit from one of its dearest, most luminous inner companions. The older brain has a soft and ongoing capacity for creative thought. Researchers describe how aging minds often grow in particular ways into creativity, drawing upon long experience to make unexpected and beautiful connections. The young mind may produce more rapid bursts of novelty, but the older mind produces deeper, richer integrations, weaving together threads from many decades into single luminous tapestries. Scientists describe this as integrative creativity, and it is the very kind that gives the world some of its most lasting works. So many beloved books, paintings, and pieces of music have been written by older minds, slowly, lovingly, drawn from long inner wells. Whether expressed in art, in cooking, in storytelling, or simply in the way one tends a garden, the aging brain's creativity becomes a slow, golden harvest, gathered patiently from the long, well-tilled fields of a richly lived life. There is, within the older brain, a quiet, ongoing capacity to be surprised. Researchers describe how, despite long experience, aging minds often retain a soft delight in the unexpected, in the small new bird at the feeder, in the unfamiliar dish, in the unexpected kindness. The brain's reward pathways still hum gently with novelty, especially when it arrives in warm and welcomed forms. The aging mind has not lost its wonder. It has simply refined where wonder is sought. The elder no longer needs grand spectacles to feel astonished. A new flower in the garden, a fresh idea in a conversation, a small kindness from a stranger, all can softly illuminate the inner sky. And so the older brain becomes a quiet keeper of small surprises, lighting them gently like fireflies in the long, soft meadow of a life that has never quite stopped being beautifully astonished. The older brain has a particularly tender relationship with hands. Researchers describe how the aging mind often experiences deep comfort from the simple use of the hands. in knitting, gardening, kneading, painting, or holding the hand of another, the motor pathways linking hand and brain remain richly engaged throughout life, and the slow, repetitive movements of skilled handwork settle the inner weather like a soft snow. Scientists call this embodied flow, but it might more simply be called the soft conversation between hand and heart. And so the older mind often finds itself most peaceful when the hands are gently busy with something familiar. The slow click of needles, the smooth pull of soil, the careful folding of warm laundry, all become small inner lullabies. So even the hands of the elder become quiet keepers of peace, weaving comfort gently into every passing hour. Within the older brain, there is often a soft, deepening love for the smell of old books. Researchers describe how olfactory and memory pathways in the aging mind are profoundly intertwined, and certain scents, books, fresh bread, pine wood, lavender, can call forth entire rooms of remembered comfort. The smell of old paper, in particular, often carries within it whole afternoons of younger reading, of quiet libraries, of long, lamp-lit evenings. The aging mind, in encountering this scent again, is gently welcomed back into a long, soft hallway of all the books it has ever loved. So an elder lingering over an old volume is not simply reading. They are inhaling decades of memory, breathing in many lifetimes of quiet companionship, gathered between the gentle covers of a single, lovingly worn, softly fragrant, lifelong, deeply trusted, deeply familiar friend. The older brain has a soft, abiding fondness for the moon. Researchers describe how older adults often feel particularly drawn to lunar imagery, to the slow turning of the night sky, to the gentle phases of moonlight upon a sleeping world. The aging mind seems to recognize in the moon a kind of long companion, faithful, slow, ever-changing yet eternal. The same moon that lit a young lover's path now lights the elder's evening window. The same moon that watched generations of grandmothers now watches gently over their grandchildren's children. And so the older mind finds in the moon a soft, comforting friend, one that has been keeping company with humanity since the very beginning of memory. So tonight, perhaps somewhere within you, a small, silver moon is rising softly, casting its slow, kindly light over the quiet inner country of your gathering sleep. In the older brain, there is a particularly tender relationship with bread. Researchers describe how the aging mind responds deeply to the simple sensory pleasures of fresh bread, warmth, scent, soft crumb, the slow steam rising. These pleasures engage many regions of the older brain at once, weaving together memory, comfort, and belonging. So many older minds carry within them long inner kitchens, the smell of grandmother's baking, the warmth of long-ago ovens, the soft voices of mothers cutting slices for hungry children. Bread becomes a kind of edible memory, a long, golden thread leading back into the warmest rooms of the past. So the older mind, in the simple act of breaking warm bread, is often quietly visiting whole generations at once, gathered around a long inner table that has somehow, miraculously, never quite stopped being set. The older brain has a soft, ongoing love for slow walks. Researchers describe how gentle walking deeply nourishes the aging mind, supporting memory, mood, and cognitive vitality. With each soft, unhurried step, the brain hums with quiet benefit, like a small inner garden being gently watered. The aging walker breathes in fresh air, notices the small changes of the season, and lets the inner weather settle into long, restful rhythms. There is no destination required. The walk itself is the gift, and the older mind, having lived long enough to know that life is not a race, takes a special pleasure in this unhurried movement. So if you ever see an elder walking slowly down a familiar lane, hands clasped behind their back, eyes soft, do not assume they are wasting time. They are weaving themselves, one slow step at a time, into the long, gentle quilt of the day. Within the older brain, there is often a deepening love for evening light. Researchers describe how the aging mind responds with particular warmth to the slow golden glow of dusk. When the sun lingers low and the world turns soft, this twilight light triggers a gentle cascade of calming chemistry, settling the brain into a long, dreamy rhythm. The aging mind seems to recognize in dusk a kindred spirit, slow, gentle, full of long shadows and warm forgiveness. And so elders often sit in the evening light, watching the slow ceremony of the day's ending. They are not alone. They are in the deep, quiet company of the world itself. So as you rest tonight, perhaps a small, inner dusk is settling over your own gathered years, draping them gently in long, golden, slow, and deeply, deeply forgiving light. The older brain has a particular fondness for the slow ceremony of tea. Researchers describe how the warm rituals of tea, the heating of the water, the careful brewing, the slow sipping, deeply engage the aging mind in calm, mindful pathways. Each step becomes a small inner meditation. The kettle whistles softly. The leaves unfurl. The warm cup settles into waiting hands. And in this slow, repeated ceremony, the older mind finds a small, reliable shelter from the busier weather of the world. So tea becomes more than drink. It becomes companionship, ritual, and quiet ground. And the aging brain, sipping slowly, returns again and again to this soft, familiar harbor, finding within each cup not just warmth and flavor, but a long, slow remembering of how to simply be gently and gratefully here. Within the older brain, there is a particularly tender capacity for prayer or quiet contemplation. Researchers describe how aging minds engaged in regular spiritual or reflective practice show calmer inner weather, deeper sleep, and greater emotional ease. The pathways tied to peace, gratitude, and connection grows softer and warmer with regular practice. Whether prayer takes the form of words, of silence, of gentle breath, or of slow gratitude before a meal, the older brain settles into it like a small bird returning to a long familiar nest. And in that settling, deep rest becomes possible. So the older mind reminds us, gently, that even the simplest forms of contemplative quiet can become a soft, lifelong sanctuary, a small, warm chapel within the chest, where the aging heart can return again and again, finding always its familiar, quiet, deeply welcoming light. The older brain has a soft, ongoing capacity for joy. Researchers describe how aging adults often experience joy more frequently than younger people, especially the quieter forms: contentment, gratitude, gentle delight. The neural pathways tied to long, calm pleasure become more easily activated with age, particularly when the elder is rested, connected, and unhurried. So joy in age becomes less a sudden firework and more a steady, glowing lamp, lit always somewhere in the inner room. It is the joy of warm tea on a cold day, of a kind word from a familiar friend, of a small bird at the window. And the older mind, having grown wise about where joy truly lives, returns to it again and again, like an old gardener returning to favorite flowers that have, season after season, never failed to bloom. Within the older brain, there is a particularly luminous appreciation for warmth itself. Researchers describe how aging minds respond deeply to physical warmth: a hot bath, a sun-warmed bench, a soft blanket, a small fire on a cool evening. These simple comforts engage the brain's calming systems with surprising depth, easing the inner weather toward long, slow rest. The older mind seems to recognize, after many years, that warmth is one of life's most essential medicines, and so elders so often gather around small fires, sit in patches of sun, wrap themselves in long shawls, they are not merely keeping warm. They are receiving a soft, ancient nourishment, a kind of slow, generous love from the world itself. So tonight, may you feel the soft warmth gathered around you like a quiet, attentive friend, drawing your aging mind gently towards sleep. The older brain has a soft, abiding affection for the slow keeping of journals. Researchers describe how the practice of gentle, reflective writing supports aging minds in remarkable ways, weaving together memory, emotion, meaning, and self-understanding. Each entry becomes a small, quiet stitching of the day into the larger story of a life. Whether written in elegant hand or scratched briefly in pencil, these soft inner records become deep companions for the older mind, and in time, they form a kind of inner library, where the elder may return to particular days the way one returns to a favorite room. So journaling becomes more than habit. It becomes a kind of inner companionship, a slow, ongoing conversation with the self, and in that gentle conversation, the older mind grows ever more known, more loved, more softly understood by its own quietly attentive self. Within the older brain, there is a particularly tender capacity to forgive oneself. Researchers describe how aging minds often develop a softer, more compassionate inner voice, learning over many seasons to speak to themselves more kindly. The harsh inner critic of younger years often gradually quiets, replaced by a gentler, more parental tone. Scientists describe this as the slow ripening of self-compassion. And it is one of the most beautiful gifts of long living. The aging mind learns, slowly, to forgive its younger versions, to release old regrets, to lay down old burdens. And in that releasing, deep peace becomes possible. So the older brain becomes a soft inner home where one finally feels welcome, no longer hurried, no longer scolded, no longer judged. There is only the warm, quiet voice that says, "You have done your best, dear one," and that is, and always was, more than enough. The older brain has a particular fondness for the slow turning of pages. Researchers describe how reading, especially slow, attentive reading, deeply nourishes the aging mind, engaging vast networks of imagination, memory, and meaning. Each page becomes a small inner room. Each chapter becomes a small inner journey, and the aging mind, having lived through many real journeys, brings to its reading a particularly rich inner companionship. So elders so often find deep joy in books, returning to favorite stories the way one returns to beloved old houses. The familiar paragraphs become small, soft cushions. The familiar characters, small old friends. And the older mind, settled into its reading chair, becomes a quiet, candlelit traveler, wandering through long, soft inner countries that no one else can quite see, gathering small treasures of meaning along its slow, deeply contented, lifelong reading journey. Within the older brain, there is often a soft, ongoing dialogue with absent loved ones. Researchers describe how aging minds frequently maintain inner conversations with those who have passed, drawing comfort, guidance, and a sense of continuing relationship. This is not loss, but love, continuing in a different form. The pathways tied to attachment remain warmly lit, even when the physical presence has gently gone. The older mind learns to carry the beloved within, to hear their voice, to feel their counsel, to sense their soft, ongoing companionship. Scientists describe this as continuing bonds, but it might more simply be called love's long, unwavering memory. So the older mind becomes a quiet, dwelling place for all those it has loved, where each beloved person is gently kept, lit softly within, in the warm, ongoing chapel of a heart that has truly known how to love. The older brain has a soft, abiding capacity for peace with one's own death. Researchers describe how aging minds, particularly those engaged in reflection, faith, or warm relationships often grow gentler about life's quiet final horizon. The inner storm clouds soften. The fear of the unknown is replaced, in many, by a kind of quiet curiosity or by a soft, deeply held trust. Scientists describe this as existential maturation, the slow ripening of the mind into peace with the largest of all mysteries. And in this peace, life itself becomes more vivid, more cherished, more luminous. The aging mind has learned, in its own way, that to live well is to slowly befriend even one's own ending. And in this gentle befriending, every remaining day becomes a small, golden gift, received with the soft, unhurried gratitude of a heart at last quietly, deeply at peace. Within the older brain, there is a particularly tender appreciation for the gift of breath itself. Researchers describe how aging minds engaged in slow breathing practices experience profound calming effects, easing the inner weather into long, restful rhythms. Each slow inhale becomes a small inner gift. Each soft exhale becomes a small inner release. The older mind, having breathed countless millions of times, comes to recognize the breath as one of its oldest, most faithful companions. It has been there since the first moment of life, and it will be there until the last. And so the elder learns to greet the breath with quiet gratitude, with each slow rising and falling becoming a soft, ongoing ceremony of being alive. So as you breathe now, may you feel this slow, ancient companion gently carrying your aging mind toward the warm shores of sleep. The older brain has a soft, ongoing love for stars. Researchers describe how older adults often feel particularly moved by the quiet glow of the night sky, by the slow, patient distance of stars. The aging mind seems to recognize in starlight a kind of long, kindred patience. These same stars watched over their first cradle. These same stars will watch over their last evening. And in this long, faithful companionship, the older mind finds a deep, settling peace. The vastness of the sky no longer frightens but soothes. The slow turning of the heavens becomes a soft inner lullaby. And so the elder, gazing upward at evening, becomes quietly part of something far larger than any single life. So tonight, may a few soft, distant stars rise quietly within you, lighting the long, slow inner sky of your gathering, gentle, beautifully unfolding sleep. Within the older brain, there is a particularly luminous capacity for legacy. Researchers describe how aging minds often grow deeply engaged with the question of what one is gently leaving behind, in the form of love, of wisdom, of kindness offered, of small influences quietly woven into other lives. This is not anxious, but generative, a soft turning of the mind toward the warm, ongoing weave of the world. Scientists describe this as generativity, the slow, late-life flowering of care for those who will come after. And in this care, the older mind finds a deep, glowing sense of meaning. Each kind word becomes a small, persisting flame. Each story told becomes a soft inheritance. And so the aging brain becomes a generous, quiet gardener of the future, planting small kindnesses everywhere it goes, whose slow blossoms will continue to open long after the planter has gently gone to rest. The older brain, taken as a whole, is one of the most beautiful, slow miracles in all of the natural world. Across decades, it has loved, learned, grieved, laughed, dreamed, and tenderly carried an entire life within its small, soft folds. Researchers continue to discover, year after year, how richly capable, how deeply adaptive, how quietly luminous the aging mind truly is. Far from being a place of fading, it is a place of slow ripening, of golden depth, of warmly gathered wisdom. And tonight, your own aging brain, whatever year of life you are walking through, is performing its own quiet wonders, weaving the gentle threads of your day into the soft, ongoing tapestry of all your years. It is doing what it has always done, faithfully and lovingly, holding you gently and completely through every single one of your beautifully lived hours. And so we arrive, softly, at the 100th small lantern along our long, gentle inner path. The aging brain, in all its slow, golden glory, has revealed itself to be a place not of dimming, but of deepening, not of loss, but of slow, luminous ripening. Each of its quiet wonders, the soft synapses, the gentle hippocampus, the warm white matter highways, the slow ripening of wisdom, the long, kind capacity for love, has been a small candle hung along the path of your settling evening. Together they form a long, glowing hallway, leading you gently inward toward the deepest, sweetest country of rest. Let your breath grow even slower now. Let your eyelids grow even softer. Let your whole quiet mind sink deeper into its long, warm pillow. You have walked a beautiful inner path tonight. And now, at last, you are arriving, gently, at the soft, candle-lit doorway of sleep. And as we draw near the soft closing of our slow inner journey, take one last gentle wander through this quiet country of the aging mind. Let your breath continue to flow long and unhurried. Like a small, dark river moving through a sleeping valley, let your shoulders rest fully into the soft cradle of your pillow. There is nothing left to learn tonight, nothing left to remember. There is only the slow, golden afterglow of all that has been gently shared. The aging brain, you may now softly feel, is a place of long, kind ripening. It is a slow forest at dusk, full of patient pathways and warm, glowing clearings. It is a candle-lit library where every shelf hums with the dear stories of a lifetime. It is a quiet inner garden, tended gently by time, blooming in seasons that no younger mind could ever quite have known. And perhaps the deepest, softest truth of all is that the aging brain has always known how to love. It has loved through every season, every joy, every loss, every soft return to morning light. It has loved you faithfully, quietly, without ever once asking anything in return. Every neuron, every synapse, every slow inner river of thought has been working tenderly on your behalf. For every year you have walked upon this gentle earth. So tonight, as the world outside grows hushed and the stars begin their slow turning, let yourself rest in the warm, knowing that your mind is not a fading place. It is a deepening place. It is a soft, candlelit chapel of memory, of love, of slow, ongoing wonder. It has carried you faithfully through every chapter of your story, and it will go on carrying you, gently, through every dream that visits you tonight, and every soft morning that quietly waits beyond the long, kind hush of your sleep. And so, dear friend, we come gently to the soft closing of our long, slow evening together. You have walked a beautiful inner path tonight. You have wandered through 100 small wonders of the aging mind, each one a quiet candle lit along the slow corridor of your settling sleep. And now those candles glow softly behind you, gentle markers of the long, kind journey you have made. Let your breath grow even slower now. Let it fall and rise like a quiet tide upon a moonlit shore. Let your hands rest open and unworried. Let your jaw soften, your forehead smooth, your eyelids grow heavy as petals after a long, warm rain. There is nothing left to do. There is nowhere left to go. The world has continued its slow turning without your watchful eye, and the morning will arrive in its own good and gentle time. If our slow company has brought you comfort tonight, you might quietly tap the like button or softly subscribe before sleep fully gathers you in. It costs nothing. It asks nothing more of you. And it helps these quiet lullabies find their way to other tired travelers searching for rest beneath the same soft sky as you. Now feel the warmth gathered around you like a long, attentive friend. Feel the soft weight of the blanket, the gentle hush of the room, the slow, faithful beating of your own kind heart, your aging mind. That beautiful, slow miracle is already dimming its lanterns one by one, drawing its shutters, easing itself gently into the warm hush of the night. There is no more to learn, no more to remember. There is only this quiet drifting, this soft sinking, this gentle letting go. In a moment, the soft music of 432 Hertz will begin its slow, golden flowing. Let it carry you the rest of the way a quiet river carries a small leaf homeward, through the long, dark hours. Sleep well, dear traveler. Sleep deeply. Sleep softly. Good night and sleep deeply.